Thanks for joining me in this tour of the Midas Pro 3 live audio system. I hope I've helped answer any questions you had. Let's go ahead and take a last look. I'll try to remember anything I may have missed thus far. I think one of the things that kind of is important to understand is some of these advanced navigation modes. Let's look at this first one, which is effects. What this does is if you have an aux send that is tied to an effects processor, it will automatically bring up the controls for that effects processor when you select that aux send. If you remember from a previous video, I have aux send 2 tied to a reverb or a delay. So once I press that select button for aux 2, on both screens I see that processor. It'd be kind of nice if it was just on one screen, so it wouldn't be as disruptive, but there it is. If you want to control it and see it, that is an option that you have, and that's what that advanced navigation mode of effects allows you to do. The next advanced navigation mode is graphic EQ, and what that does is when you select an output that has a graphic EQ attached to it, the graphic EQ will show up on the VCA faders. So what I'm going to do to demonstrate this is I'm going to open up the graphic EQ on this on the right screen here, and I will select my left master because that has a graphic EQ attached to it. As soon as I press that button, my VCAs started displaying graphic EQ and then a frequency, and I can scroll through all the different frequencies, and I can use these faders to cut or boost any of those frequencies. And as I do that, by the way, don't do this. This is probably not a good way to EQ your system. As I do that, my graphic EQ on the screen here is changing. So if you don't want to shell out the big bucks for a Rapide controller, this is another way to do it. It's actually pretty convenient, and a lot more convenient than you doing it with the mouse and pointer of dragging it up or down. The last advanced navigation control we have is MCA. And what MCAs do is they're relatives of the VCA. And what it allows you to do is kind of do what VCAs do for the masters, except do that for the aux sends. So when you select an aux send, instead of seeing the regular VCAs that are controlling the master outputs, you see MCAs. So here I see aux send 1 vocals. So just like a balance of vocals going to the master, a balance of vocals going to this monitor can be raised or lowered with this one fader. So the balance remains the same, but the overall volume of that entire group that is members of this vocals VCA can be controlled with this one fader. Once again, this is something that could be hard to understand or wrap your head around if you're someone that's still new to doing live audio, and you might not want to use an advanced mode like that, but if you find that kind of functionality helpful, it's there for you. Let's take a look at this master section. I've dealt a whole lot on the mix bus section, the detail area. Let's take a look at this master section here. At the top here we have assignable controls to control important inputs or important features of any input really, or any output. If you press this little quick access button next to the assignable controls, it brings up this window, and it allows you to assign any of these controls to any other control that's available on the board. So if I want to assign a control to one of these assignable controls, I can press and hold the button underneath the control and then go over to any control I want to assign. Say I want to assign the threshold of the compressor on one of my microphones, and press that, and as soon as I did that, it popped up on the screen, and now it says Sure, which is the name of that input, and threshold for the compressor. So when I turn that, it actually turns the threshold on that microphone. I can go back in there and touch the gain on a different one. So if I want to do digital trim for another microphone, say my kick drum, and then I go through and another digital gain. Okay, so these controls are now always tied to those controls. It allows you to put the controls that need the most attention kind of at your fingertips. You just have to remember what they are because there's no labels or indication of what they do. Only when you press this quick access button, you'll see what those controls are doing. And last but not least, let's go back into automation. At the beginning of this series, we created a show file and then we created a scene inside of that show file. I've neglected to remind you to store your automation, to store this scene. The easiest way to do that is to press store in this automation area. You press that once and you get a pop-up window that says store scene, and it gives you a few options. You can insert the scene before the currently selected scene, store to the next available scene, or overwrite the currently loaded scene. I'll go ahead and overwrite the existing scene. So once you have your scene saved, you also need to save the show file. And you can always tell when you've stored a scene but not saved the show file by this indicator at the top of both screens that says not saved. What you want to do is you want to go to automation, where we are now, and hit the red save button. Once you do that, it commits that information to flash memory that's no longer volatile, so if you lose power, that information is now stored. It also allows you to take that scene and transfer it to a USB flash drive, which then you can take to a Mac computer with the Midas offline editing software tool and rename or recolor any of your inputs, deal with patching. You can take care of all those things offline, bring that back in, load it from your flash drive, and have all those changes load right back into the board seamlessly. So I hope you enjoyed this little series on the Midas Pro 3 live audio system. Just wanted to let you know that this thing, when it first arrived, was very intimidating for me. I spent about 4 hours with it, and then my head started to wrap itself around how this console works and how to apply the principles that I know to the way Midas has implemented them in this system. So once again, I hope this information was helpful and informative. Be blessed.